absence, and I was asking God, what should I really speak upon? What would you like me to speak upon? And he started sharing some things. But I have to tell you, it's different being up here instead of with my little kids in the back, teaching them. This week we were teaching our kids in the back, and it was so cute. Mike was telling them about how Jesus was so popular at one time during his life and that. And one of the kids stood up and says, "But Mr. Mike, you've always said Jesus was never a singer." We're kind of looking, and I thought, a singer? What is they talking about? So we asked the child, we said again, "What are you saying?" They said, "You said Jesus was never a singer." And I said, okay, I've missed something in our teachings of what we've missed when telling that. The more we kept asking them, we realized they were quoting us that Jesus was never a sinner. But they thought the popularity was from the singing or something, but they kept saying, "Oh, no, 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 you kept telling us Jesus was never a singer." So our boys and girls in the back are fun to work with. I know one of them told me this past week, too. I was telling Pastor John the other day in the office. One of them came up to me and said, "We don't know why Pastor Mark's not singing the shrimp song anymore." I said, "The shrimp song?" You're kind of thinking, the shrimp song. I just don't know no songs we sing in service about shrimp. I've missed something. And I said, "Could you sing me a verse of the shrimp song so maybe I can tell Pastor Mark that he needs to sing it?" And she said, "Sure. Shrimp will rise as we wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord." And I said, "Oh, no, honey, you've missed that. It's not shrimp. It's strength." But I'll tell Pastor Mark that you want him to sing the shrimp song. So we are real thrilled in the back with our boys and girls. If you haven't had a chance to come back there in the back with our boys and girls, come back and visit the rooms back there. We've opened up a 4- and 5-year-old church just here recently. We're so excited. And I know last week I was over there with them. We put up another bounce house in the youth sanctuary to help our 4- and 5-year-olds jump to during the middle of service. And I went over there, and one of them grabbed my waist and told me it was the best time they've ever had in their lives in church, and they're 4. So I was real thrilled with everything going on back there. So if you get a chance, walk through and see. We've got new babies everywhere. We've got different things. You could peep indoors and see them. They're jumping and happy and laughing and singing songs and that. So I want to encourage you, if you want to be a part with us in the children's ministry, we would love to have you come and be a part with us. We have people where you can plug in with some of our smallest ones that are 6 to 12 weeks old. You can plug in with our 1- and 2-year-olds, our 2 and 3s, 4s and 5s, or even our school-age children. We would love to have you come and be a part if you want to come and be a part. Also, right quick, too, on Wednesday night, we are going to be showing the movie Inside Out for all of our boys and girls here in the main sanctuary and having dinner. So if you have children, kindergarten through 5th grade, we want to invite you to bring them out at 6 o'clock. You can go fellowship in the coffee house and have a great time, and we're going to come in here and have dinner and watch a great movie. So I just want to tell you that. This week, as I was praying about what God wanted me to speak about and what he wanted me to come and say to y'all this morning, I was reading a story about former President Harry Truman. And I was reading that he was real famous for all the long walks that he took. And, back then he could take long walks. He didn't have the paparazzi or people out to gun the president down. And so one evening, Truman decided to stroll to Memorial Bridge on the Potomac. While he was there, he grew curious about the mechanism that raised the middle span of the bridge. Making his way across the catwalks and through the inner workings of the bridge, he suddenly came upon the bridge tender. The bridge tender was sitting there eating his supper out of a tin bucket. The man showed no surprise when he looked up and saw the most powerful man in the world at the time. He just swallowed his food, wiped his mouth, smiled, and said, "Mr. President, I was just thinking of you." And they said it was a greeting that President Truman never forgot. President Truman, as I was reading his experience in this week, started reminding me of the story of Luke chapter 19, where we meet Zacchaeus. And we always think Zacchaeus we all sing it, a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. But there's much more to the story of Zacchaeus, and that's what I want to speak to you about this morning. See, Zacchaeus had an opportunity, kind of like this bridge tender. This bridge tender got a chance to meet the most powerful man at the time of the world. But Zacchaeus got to welcome into his house the creator of the universe in human form. So if you'll open with me to your Bibles to Luke chapter 19, if y'all guys can help me back there and throw it up onto the screen. This morning, his title of my sermon this morning is, "What if Jesus came to your house?" And go ahead, Chris, if you'll flip it for me. Luke chapter 19, verse 1 says, "Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was very wealthy. Let me give you a little background of what's going on here in Jericho and things. At this time, Jesus was passing through Jericho. He's on his way to Jerusalem. This will be his final time before his crucifixion. And the crowds were following Jesus like crazy at this time. He was very popular because they were watching all these miracles taking place. Jesus was healing people. The dead was being raised. There was fantastic deliverances taking place in his ministry. So people were following him all around. And he was on his way to Jericho. And we meet right here in verse 2, Zacchaeus. And it tells us he was a successful businessman and a tax collector. And Jericho was booming right now, too, because it was exporting and manufacturing balsam. So the people were really exporting stuff. And at this time and age in the time, there was only 3 major places that collected taxes. And it was Capernaum, Jerusalem, and Jericho. So Zacchaeus was the chief over all the Jericho taxes, and he overseen it. All the collectors would go out. They would extort the money from the people, overcharge them, take money from them on all their stuff, and Zacchaeus was the main one here taking it, and they'd bring it back to Zacchaeus, and he'd take his cut off the top, and then he would then pay the Romans what was due. So naturally, if you're thinking about this, the Jews did not like Zacchaeus. He was not very popular. He stole from them. He took money from them. So he was hearing all these Jews talking at this time that Jesus was coming to town. And he wanted to see who Jesus was. If you'll come on with me, Chris, verse 3 and 4. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but being a short man, he could not because of the crowd. So he ran ahead and he climbed a sycamore tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. Can you start seeing this story come together? I love to tell this story to the boys and girls. Start seeing the story come together. Zacchaeus is seeing Jesus come into town. He's hearing all the people saying, man, you won't believe it. He just healed a woman with the issue of blood. Right before we're reading in the story where the blind man called out to him, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. And he just healed him, caused him to see. He just seen all these stories starting to take place. And Zacchaeus is hearing this. And he starts seeing Jesus come into town, and his curiosity is up. I got to go see what this Jesus is all about. So he takes off running as Jesus is coming in. And he wanted to see, but the crowd is all around him, and all taller people apparently, because it tells us, the Bible says he was very short, so he couldn't see over. And he's trying to see. I need to see this Jesus. I can't see. He can't say to the people, excuse me, would you let me through? Because the people didn't like Zacchaeus. So surely if he said, excuse me, can I get in front of you? I don't think any of them was going to turn around and say, oh, yes, come on. They wasn't letting him in, so he's jumping around trying to see. I need to see this Jesus. And he looks down the road, down the path, and lo and behold, he sees a sycamore tree, and he takes off running to climb up this sycamore tree. I was reading about the time and everything that Zacchaeus was in, and it said during this time that a man of his age, which we know he's older, and being a government official, was not supposed to run. But Zacchaeus didn't care. He took off running because he just wanted to see Jesus. He didn't care. He didn't care what they thought of him when he picked up his cloak and started running down through there. I got to climb that tree. I've got to get up. I've got to see Jesus. And here comes Jesus. Zacchaeus is sitting up in the tree. The crowd is coming. They were pushing and pulling, all the excitement of what was happening. And it says right here, starting in verse 5, when Jesus reached the spot, there must have been a spot here to look up in that tree. And he looked up and he said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down and at once and welcomed him gladly. Think about this. Jesus looked up and he called Zacchaeus by name. Zacchaeus, Zacchaeus. Do you remember the day you got saved? Do you remember when Jesus called your name? When he said your name? Do you remember how clear you heard it? I do. I was 12 years old. I was sitting in church with my parents, and I remember the pastor preaching, and I remember there was such a pulling on me, and the pastor started giving an altar call, and I thought, I got to get up. I've got to get up. I've got to go meet. And I knew Jesus was calling my name. And I can remember being that age, jumping up out of that seat and coming out of that pew and starting to make my way down. And I wasn't worried what the people to the left or the right were thinking of me. I knew Jesus was calling me. And this is the same way Zacchaeus was. He knew Jesus was calling him. And I know for a fact this crowd, probably thinking about it, don't you know there come a hush over this crowd when Jesus said, Zacchaeus, come down. Immediately, I must stay at your house. Don't you know the crowd that was pushing and pulling with all their excitement to see Jesus, all of a sudden went, oh, look who he's talking to. Can you believe he's talking to him? The worst sinner out of the whole stinking town. Jesus is talking to him. I don't think anybody in that crowd looked up there and said, oh, look, there's Zacchaeus. Jesus is calling him to come. I think in my heart of hearts, I think they looked at Zacchaeus and seen that tree, and somebody was thinking, where is a saw and an axe? Let's cut this tree down with that creep in it. Jesus is calling him down of all people. Of all people. Listen, and when he said all the people saw this, if you can follow along with me, Chris, all the people saw this and began to mutter, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. How relevant is that to us today as a church? When someone comes and we meet someone who doesn't know Jesus, sometimes we act like this crowd did. Jesus wants to meet that person. Jesus wants to see that person. I can't believe this. And you see, Jesus looked at Zacchaeus. When he looked up in that tree, he didn't see the creep that all the people seen. He started looking at him with love and compassion. And Jesus started just seeing the Zacchaeus that he knew that needed him. And he started calling him. You know, sometimes in our life, sometimes we come across people that we think, they need Jesus, but I don't want to put up with them. I don't want to deal with them. Do you know how much work that's going to be when I lead them to Jesus? That's kind of how this interpretation of the Jews was. He's such a sinner. Why do you want to mess with him? People don't come to Jesus already cleaned up. And there's no sinner too great that Jesus can't help and doesn't love. There's no sinner that he just doesn't call out like he was calling Zacchaeus. And he was calling him. And he was telling him, come down, I want to go to your house. Let's go to your house quickly. Can you imagine how Zacchaeus felt? He's sitting up in the tree. The man hated in the city, and Jesus is calling him out. I'm almost 100% positive he came down quicker out of that tree than he went up it. This guy's calling me out. The whole crowd stopped. What could he want with me? Right here in this moment, Jesus and Zacchaeus disappear out of the story for a few minutes. I was telling my husband yesterday when we were riding, I said, the Bible doesn't tell us what he says. Me being a woman, I want to know what he said. I need those details. What did he say exactly to him? What did he, did he get in there and just tell him you're really been a bad sinner? Or did he get in there and he wrapped his arms around him and told him how much he loved him and that things were forgiven? But the scripture doesn't tell us what he said to him. He just tells us in verse 8, but Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house because this man too is a son of Abraham. We know a life change, something radical happened right there to Zacchaeus because he had a radical change. He came out and he said, I'm going to give everything I have, half of everything I have to the poor. I'm going to pay back everyone who's done terrible things. I've done terrible things to. I'm going to pay them back 4 times the amount. So we know he had a change in his heart. And I think, too, in this moment, Zacchaeus realized that Jesus was not merely a guest in his house, that he had become the host of his house. Look at verse 10. Jesus had a different view of Zacchaeus, too, than the crowd had, and all of us probably have of Zacchaeus when you're reading the story. He said this, the Son of Man came to seek and to save that which was lost. Jesus seen the real problem with Zacchaeus. he didn't see the ugliness of Zacchaeus' heart. He didn't see that. He didn't see that he was so mean to people and everything. He seen that Zacchaeus was lost and needed him. And he called him out. And he said something spectacular to him. And Zacchaeus gave his heart to Jesus Christ. What a dramatic salvation. And it must have been something huge that took place for Luke to put this right here in Luke chapter 19, for him to write it. It wasn't just a simple salvation. Think about it. If it was just a simple salvation, he probably wouldn't have recorded it, because they've seen many people come to Christ. And we don't see all those salvations recorded, but there was something spectacular here that happened with Zacchaeus. A life change in front of all the people. Can you imagine the crowd's face when he came out and they're all surrounding him, and he tells Jesus, I'm going to give everything, half of everything I have to the poor, and I'm going to pay anyone I cheated back 4 times the amount? People seen a dramatic change in Zacchaeus right there on the spot. And I'm sure they're trying to figure out what exactly happened to this guy. But Jesus seen that he was lost, and he said, the Son of Man has come to seek and save that which was lost. How important is it for us to make the same discovery that Zacchaeus started making? I've been inviting Jesus in as a guest, but now he's become the host of my house. Now he's come in to live with me. See, we need to surrender our lives to Jesus Christ like Zacchaeus did. And when we do, we need to realize we are under his command. When we have placed our faith in Jesus, something you need to realize, we are no longer our own. We are not our own. You know, sometimes when we give our hearts to Jesus Christ, we haven't surrendered everything. We haven't given up everything, because you could tell it sometimes by our talk. All my future, my plans, my family, how am I going to meet my spouse? I've got all my plans in my hands of what I'm doing. And that's not the way Christians should act. We should start saying, when we surrender our lives to Jesus and we give them totally to him, we should say, I belong to the Lord, and I want to do what he wants me to do. Zacchaeus done this. Automatically, he's seen a true surrender. He surrendered everything right then and there. And sometimes, you know, some of us come halfway to Jesus. Have you ever thought about it? We come halfway. Jesus, forgive me of my sins, and I want to live with you for eternity. But these are still my things I'm holding on to, and I'm not willing to give them up. It's going to be my way with some things, and I'm not going to give all these things to you. And then we wonder, when we don't surrender everything, why we start stumbling and why we start having all these problems. See, when Jesus calls you, he wants a true surrender. He wants every bit of you. He don't want a part of you. He don't want a halfway of you. He wants every part of you. And this is what Zacchaeus was seeing. You know, the Apostle Paul prayed in Ephesians 3:17, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. Let me paraphrase it for you. That Christ may come into your heart, and he may finally be in your home, and he would settle to become a family member. Some of us treat Jesus Christ as a guest, an honored guest, but he's a guest. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Some of us only pray when we need Jesus. We only say, oh, Jesus, I got this problem today. Can you help me with this problem today? Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. And we want Jesus just then where we invite him in like a guest. We don't want him there 24/7 as a family member. It's just as a guest. And some of us, sometimes we fall into traps, and we find ourselves with a bad report, and we call upon Jesus, who we haven't called upon in months. And we want him to come up and answer us. And see, Jesus doesn't want to live like that in your hearts. He wants to become a family member. He wants to be a part of your life. He wants to come in and be that family member when you're having a great day and it's a joyous day. He wants to say, yes, 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 yes. I'm there with you in the joyous times. He wants to be there with you when you get that pay raise on your job and you're going, yeah. He wants to be that family member. Don't your family members cheer for you when great things start happening for you? I know mine does. And Jesus wants to become that kind of family member with you. He wants to cheer. He wants to be there when you do go to the doctor and get that bad report. He wants to say, it's going to be all right. We're going to be all right. We're going to keep believing the great report that's coming. He wants to be that kind of family member. He don't want to come in as an honored guest. He don't want to come in just when you need him. And a lot of people tell me, I've asked Jesus into my heart, but it doesn't show. And I've realized sometimes those people are just inviting Jesus in as a guest. He's just there when you want him to come. Because, when we invite guests in, we don't invite them all the time. The family members, we're always, when they ring the doorbell, come on, come on. If it's a guest, you start running around trying to clean up your house and everything else, and, oh, my gosh, I wish they would have called before they came. All this stuff. You see, Jesus don't want to be like that. He wants you to take him with you everywhere and through every situation and everything you got going on. You see, clearly Zacchaeus had a change in his life. Salvation came to him. He was no longer the same. He was different. He was a totally changed man, and the crowd started seeing this. I want to ask a question this morning. Can someone see by the evidence in your life that salvation has come to you today? Or are you a Sunday Christian? We know you that we see you on Sundays, but we don't know how you do Monday through Saturday and how you live. Does your coworkers really know that you serve Jesus Christ? Or do they see someone that's kind of, oh, praise God, and something happens and I'm going to go off here and mutter a few bad words or say a few things? Or I'm going to do this, being out with some friends and taking that casual social drink's okay. They all know I'm a Christian. Think about it. What are people seeing? Do they see by the evidence of your life a real life change, a surrender? Because, when you really give your heart to Jesus Christ, you really got to give your heart to Jesus Christ. It can't be no halfway in and halfway out. And Zacchaeus went all the way in. Can you imagine what it must have been like when he did give his heart to Jesus Christ and he did give up half of all of his money? Sometimes we think when we come to Jesus Christ that we're going to have to give up all these things and our life's going to be boring. And when we have to give up all of our things, what are we going to do then? Because we don't have all these things. But I want to tell you something this morning. When you give up something for Jesus Christ like Zacchaeus did, he's going to put something even better back in its place. He's not going to leave you empty-handed. I don't read here at the end of the story about Zacchaeus that Zacchaeus went away poor and downtrodden and all this. It set ablaze a lot more things happening right there from Zacchaeus' story. And what is your story telling today of you? How are you serving Jesus Christ? Jesus wants to come into your heart. He don't want to be a halfway guest. He wants to come into your heart right now and live in your life right now, not halfways. Does he have free reign? Do you allow him to do what he really wants to do in your life? Or are you kind of holding them back and saying, Jesus, right now my career needs to really take front and center, not you. Or I'm in a desperate search for a spouse right now, Jesus. I need you to go back this way. Because I'm not concerned about where I meet this spouse at just as long as I got one. That's how some of us live right now. Or you know what? My whole goal right now is to get out of high school, to go to college, and to be somebody. Jesus, I'll come back and pick you back up when I'm in my 20s or somewhere in there. Jesus don't want to be treated like that. He wants to walk with you. And I want to tell you something. When you do give him free reign in your life, you're going to find out, man, you can breeze through high school. You can breeze through college. You're going to have that big career you want. You're going to get out and have that ideal job you want. You're going to have all these things that you want. But you've got to do a total surrender. Can Jesus do what he wants to do with you? Or do you tell him, I don't want to talk to somebody right now. Somebody's sitting right there beside you and Jesus is telling you, tell them about me. And you go, not right now. They may not like me. Or I don't really want to put up with that right now. That's someone's life. And what are you doing? Can he really do what he wants to do in you? Can he really raise you up to be that new preacher that he's calling you out to be, or that evangelist? Or are you just sitting there with your talents and just coming and sitting on the seat? Does Jesus have free reign with you? Jesus wants to help you and change you just like he did Zacchaeus. He's got a change he wants to have happen in your life. He wants to change you for the good, not for the bad, but for the good. He's not there to make your life miserable. I've heard so many people say, I don't want to come to Jesus. Not right now. Because look at everything I have to give up. This great life. All this happening for me. But I tell you what, when you invite Jesus Christ in, your life's going to change for the better. He never promised us it's going to be easy, but it's going to change for the better. Because when you invite him in, look at Zacchaeus' life right there. His life changed. I'm sure when he went back to his daily routine, still being that tax collector, he was a much happier person. He was much more friendly. I'm sure he had much more friends now, because he wasn't swindling everybody out of their money and doing all the bad things. But I'm sure he had more friends, and his life started getting better, easier for him. And I want to ask you this morning, where are you at with Jesus Christ? I know I'm short and not long this morning, but I want to ask you, where are you at with Jesus Christ? Have you truly surrendered your life like Zacchaeus? Or are you really playing a game? I'm half in, I'm half out. I'm hot this Sunday. I'm not hot the next. No one can see anything in me any different than what they see in anyone else. Where are you at right now? I want to have everyone bow your head and close your eyes right now. And I want to ask, where is your heart right now with Jesus Christ? Have you truly made him an honored host in your home, a family member? Or is he a guest? Maybe he was like Zacchaeus. You've never invited Jesus in, but you know that he's been calling your name. As he did with him, Zacchaeus, Zacchaeus. You know he's been calling your name. You know he's got something for you, and you've not been sure if you should surrender or not. And I want to ask you this morning is your morning. Jesus is calling your name this morning. And he wants you to come on. He wants you to come on up and come to him and surrender your lives to him. If that's you this morning, I'm going to ask you to boldly be like Zacchaeus. When Jesus called him, he said, Zacchaeus, Zacchaeus, come down out of that tree, for I'm going to your house today. And if you know Jesus has been calling your name, and you know it, that he's been calling your name, I'm going to ask you to come and get up out of your chair and come down to the front, because we want to lead you to Jesus Christ, the greatest thing that can ever happen in your life. I want to give you an opportunity to come to the front.